All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's great to see such a good turnout. I'm Kelsey Lynn Mayo, the exhibitions curator at View Arts Center. We're very happy to put on these artist series. The artist talks are always a wonderful way to get to know artists and their work. You can always check them out on our YouTube channel, which is you can access through viewarts.org under artists for artists and then artist talks if any of you want to go back and look at this talk later. But let me introduce Amy E. Bartell, who is an artist, activist, and teacher out of Syracuse, New York, and I'll let her take it away and tell you a little more.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. I want to thank you, Kelsey. I want to thank the good people of View for taking in Dear World. Dear World is showing at View until February 15th. And I'm grateful to you for all of your help with all of your support on this, for being here with me tonight in this conversation. But also, there's some other folks I want to thank. Somewhere out there in the stratosphere is Donna Steiner, my person, the amazing writer, incredible human, who also knows that every meal is a potential sculpture opportunity. So we'll be eating dinner and eating edamame. And she'll say, "So are we saving these?" And I'll be like, "Yes," because they become these little twirls of things. So she's out there somewhere and very patient with all the things I collect and dry and save and honor in our house, in our garage, in our backyard. So she's out there, and hello. I also want to thank Donna Stoner, who is here somewhere. She's on the board at View. She's a dear friend of mine. She's an incredible artist. And it was her encouragement to submit my work to View that really got this going. And I thank her because, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was this phrase that many of us talked about and had somewhere tucked in our memories, which was check on your strong friends, which we did. And some of us are those strong friends. And then, like many things, we let some of those check ins go. And Donna Stoner didn't. So when I was doing Dear World, as I've been evolving Dear World, Donna Stoner checked in with me and said, "So where's that going? What are you doing with that? And you should send your work to Kelsey Mayo." So, you know, everything is everything. And here we are tonight in this screen. It's weird not knowing who's here. So I don't know who else is here, but I want to give a shout out to a few people that I think might be here, which are I'm teaching at the University of Tennessee at Martin right now remotely. I think some of you are here, and hello, students. I'm teaching a foundations class on Sunday afternoons for View to a group of amazing people. Hello, some of you who are here. Last but not least, I taught for 15 years at SUNY Oswego, and I have an amazing collection of people that I stay in touch with. And I think some of you are here as well. And the biggest gift of my life is being a teacher. And, at a certain point, it's like not what you get, it's what you are able to give back. And that's what it's about for me. So I'm really glad you're all here. Um, I want to share my screen and talk a little bit about the artist statement. Allow me to get my slideshow up here.
While you're pulling that up, I'll also mention there's a chat function. We will have a Q&A portion at the end for the audience, but if you have a really pressing question, I can also keep an eye on it and read it to Amy as well, as I'll be throwing some questions her way too.
Thank you. So allow me to share my screen and show you what I believe is the formatting, perhaps the framework for every exhibition that I do, which is the artist statement. So I want to show you the artist statement. I'll be reading it and talk to you a little bit about what I think that means for the viewer and for me as the person who writes it and then makes the work. So the artist statement is something I spend a lot of time on. It's something that I feel the work deserves, and it's also something that allows me to use language that for me is as important to combine and collect as it is for the images that I combined and collect. So it's about Dear World as a series of mixed media images that speak to the delicate, splintered landscape of dualities with cracks with ineffable beauty that has grown, but stories have fallen, edges where so much has been marginalized and so many are woundable. Dear World is a gathering of petals, branches, shadows, beach glass, clay, pebbles, paint, ink, loose ends. I meander at the edges of paths and parking lots. I take photos of what is tossed, blown, still. In the dailiness of sketching, I draw spirals, cells, and water over and over again. The patterns are soothing, and the repetition chisels new roots for my thoughts. I paint and assemble. I make hoops from clay and bridges from thin air. Dear World is a plea, a prayer, an elegy, a love letter. It is a reliquary of nests, the enigma of our shared sky, the flown air of birds. This work is a reckoning with the moment we have and a reverence for the stitches we hold onto at the seams. So to me, the artist statement is your introduction to what's in my head. It's perhaps a way to provide some context for you as the viewer. It's perhaps a way for me to be mindful about the language that I'm choosing to frame the work. The language about all of it matters. The words that we choose matter. But it's also a way perhaps for you to enter the work and then make it your own. I think an artist statement is an introduction, and hopefully people who take the time to write them are matched up with people who take the time to read them, because it's a powerful synthesis, right? The writer and the reader then have the opportunity to work together on the wall and in your eyes and in your brain, and then meander down whatever intricacies you do based on that information. So Dear World began for me as a collection of images, I don't know, a few years ago. And it began, I think, towards the beginning of COVID, and it began out of utter heartbreak, utter nonsense in my brain and in my soul that I couldn't contain. I didn't know how to speak about. I didn't know how to act in. I didn't know how to affect. And so you know, I walk a lot. I walk the world. I walk the edges of the world. I walk loops. I walk circles. There's this saying that said it is solved by walking. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to keep walking. And in the walking, you think about what is growing up in places where it shouldn't grow. You think about things that have been pushed to the edges. You think about all the heartbreaking ways that we marginalize people and places, and how we wrestle with the topics of homophobia and sexism and racism and classism and all of the things that we live through, survive, and yet sometimes have to do so by ourselves growing up through those cracks. There's this great Mary Oliver quote that says, "I tell you this to break your heart, by which I mean only that it break open and never close again." And so my commitment to Dear World was to live in that broken heart and to make of that something that had some beauty, that had some mystery, that had some truth, that had some hopefully moment of peace, that had some continuation, from piece to piece, from day to day, from epic history that we are living to epic history that we are living. The Dear World for me became a getting through. Dear World has become for me something that will travel with me as I keep traveling, as the gifts of another day keep presenting themselves to me. You know, those of us who get to keep having birthdays have a lot to say now, and we have stories and we have information and we have all of the tributaries that our lives have riveted. And so that is our Dear World, you know, within this Dear World. So where does it all go? How does it become something that we can speak about, speak to each other about? How does it something that we can sleep with, live with, love? And so it became too big, too fast to me to think in such broad ways. And so in my meandering, in my roaming, in my walking to solve things, I decided that really where my vision was most drawn was things that were small and tiny, and um, also perhaps unnoticed, kicked to the side. Those were the things that I grabbed onto early as the way to explain the bigger picture. I want to tell you a story about this morning, literally this morning, and how dear world goes for me. So I'm going to share my screen. Uh, I was leaving our house this morning, and behind my car, sitting in the snow, all by itself with nothing near it, on the driveway was this beautiful branch. And I don't know where it came from. It doesn't matter. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It was alone. It was, just beaming with this really subtle, beautiful color on these weird winter mornings. And so I took the picture, of course, because that's what I do. And then I picked up the branch, and then I took the picture of what the branch left behind, which is to me this ghostly version of our imprint, right? We have these ways that we affect the world, that we walk, that we leave our imprint, and then we leave what's left behind. And that is this print of this branch that I picked up that was the ghost image of it. And then, of course, because I am me, the branch came with me to the studio. And so it traveled on my shirt, which I'm currently now wearing. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because the branch has come to the Zoom. The branch is here now. And on its drive, on our drive, me and the branch to the studio this morning, I said, now you're art. Now you're part of something. I can't and don't pick up everything off the ground and bring it to the studio. Although there are many days when I think Donna must wonder why it's taking me so long to get out of the garage because, she often will go to the kitchen window and wave goodbye. And sometimes it takes me a really long time to get to the part where I'm actually leaving because stuff happens, stuff happens. And I get to be part of that stuff happens. And, I'm never late for anything, but I have to leave early in order to not be late because I'm at a phase in my work and at a phase in my understanding of myself where I am making a practice of intention, where that's a really big part of what I want to be doing with my time and with it, what is giving me back the most. Yesterday I was behind a truck under the 81 overpass coming to my studio and some kind of service truck, some kind of company work truck. I don't know what the company was, but all I know is across the back of the truck, it said humility, patience, and integrity. Those are the three words. And so I'm behind this truck for what felt like ever. And so I'm reading the three words and I'm like, yeah, good job. Like what a great series of words to put in the back of your truck. I don't know what that was about. But in that way that we are influenced literally by everything, it really made me think about what we put in the world, the visuals that we live around, the words that we live around, the things that we are forced to endure by having to read or be behind. But for that brief moment, I was like really happy with whoever was driving that truck, that of all the things that they could choose to put on their car, and I have seen a lot, those are the three things they put. In the back of my car, it says love wins. And on the back of that car, it said humility, patience, and integrity. And I thought, well, we're not a bad combo right here. We're doing all right here under the bridge, hoping it doesn't fall on our watch. But, it's part of the way of noticing, noticing what we take in and noticing where that sits once you take it in, where that language sits, what resonates, what makes you boil, right? So I get to my studio and I'm developing or trying to develop in addition to meandering the world, some daily practices that bring me back to center. I think part of our responsibility as people who are here on the front lines at the time when it's all happening is to find ways to take care of ourselves. How do we sustain ourselves for the long haul? And like any first responder and all of the first responders who are taking care of California with all of their might right now, like any first responder, your job is to go in and be on that line. And then hopefully you have a chance to get off the line and renew and get back up and get back on the line. That's literal, it's metaphorical. And so I get to the studio and there's a few things I'm doing as a daily part of my physical practice. And one of them is this video, and this person is doing Qigong breathing. which I've not been doing very long, but I really like. And so I don't know it well enough to do it without the video, right? So this person's doing the Qigong breathing, and it's very, very effective and very helpful and just expansive and beautiful in all the ways that you hope really is true when people say breathing's helping, when you're like, mm-hmm. And but it really can. And so I'm doing this Qigong breathing, and there's a point in the video when the person says they're introducing a new move and they're trying to show you where to put your feet. And the person says, try to stay stable physically. And I just laugh every time they say that, like, all the ways that some of us are off the rails at some point every day in some way. But I love that he clarifies that so we all know. And the other thing I love about the video is toward the very end, there's stillness, there's beauty and gesture, there's all of this lovely 3 or 4 minute expansive time that has been created. And then on their end, on his end, you hear a car alarm in the background. It's like this beautiful, quiet, still breathing moment. And then there's a car alarm, which he does not acknowledge in any way. We just all keep going through the car alarm. And I thought, this is great. This is what it's about, how you keep going through the car alarm with your qigong breathing.
Yeah, and
So
how to stay present and mindful.
yes. And let yourself laugh. I mean, I actually laugh at those moments just because it's a relief, it's a relief to feel that humanness in those moments.
So mindfulness is obviously a large part of your practice in life. As it sounds, you do this ritual with breathing work. Is there any other rituals you do throughout your day within your practice or life that helps you to think about how we are coexisting in this world with all these other creatures and people and
Yeah. There are some things and they grow and change as I grow and change, and some days I don't do them. Like, uh I have a certain game that I play every morning, and that I'm kind of like, I want my numbers to increase. I want a credit for another day. So I'm really attached to that. But there are other things that I have like a group of things that I choose from in a day. And I have like a menu actually of dailiness that I make sure I take care of. And so walking and exercising, breathing now with the car alarm, without the car alarm. I do some this year. I'm one of those people who really tries to do some kind of reset at the new year. It seems like not just theory. It seems actually important to take a step back, move forward, take a step to the side, do something to be to find ways to add more intention and make sure that you're actively choosing something to feed you, right? There's so many ways that we can feed ourselves, words, music, all of it. But then there are things that we find ourselves doing without the intention behind them. So I'm doing these daily little 6-inch drawing things. I don't know if I hold these up properly, but I'm doing 6-inch, they're like little tiles. And so I don't finish one every day, but I tend to them every day. I tend to them, like I visit them, I work on them. And they're connected by a couple of things. One is they're connected by a limited color palette. So I've decided to work in a limited color palette of oranges and blues. I've decided to work in a certain kind of cellular landscape pattern. And I've decided that it's really the act of making them that is the ritual. It is not what they become in their finished product, but it is the intention that around the sitting down and the making. So there's these there's drawing is a meditation. It can be a meditation. And if you take away the pressure about what it should be when it grows up, you can just be with it in the moment. I also think that there's so much physicality that can be channeled into the drawing. When I go out into the world and I'm meandering those edges, all of that information goes in. It all goes in, and I file some of it. I keep a lot of it. I photograph a lot of it, but it all then becomes part of what I have access to in the output. And so the dailiness is some way to take what is theoretical and sometimes new and make it accessible to me in some kind of visual way. I mean, I'm working in my head all the time. I mean, am at work all the time in my head. I'm writing or I'm painting, and there's no way for me to show you that until I show you that. But it's always there, you know. And so my dailiness is sometimes a way of making visual what is in the ether of my brain, and giving it a place to live out loud, so to speak. So I think that's my answer to your question.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's like a thread I've seen through the full series between the nest and the illustration work as well. And I was noticing that you have let go of just two-dimensional and you've moved to 3D, and your materiality shows in both, but you're open to new materials. And I was wondering how you decide or define what a material is.
Oh, great question. Um, well, there's nothing that's off limits to me when it comes to materials because I think, you know, when I think about material, I think of it as internal and external, right? Things that I can touch, things that I feel, things that I think. It's all my material. And the material that goes in and informs me, the walks I take, the news I read, the music I listen to, the people I do and don't connect with, and why, all of the things that provide me with information and our input, right? Those are that's material. That's material that it's then my job to understand the filtration of it. You know, I was talking to Kelsey the other day about you know, when I started working at a greenhouse a couple of years ago, it was actually 2 summers ago. And at that time, speaking of fires, there were Canadian wildfires that we were very much downwind of in certain areas, and our area of New York State was part of that. So I was working at this greenhouse in an N95 mask outdoors because I was breathing in all of this silt, all of this, whatever was in the air from the fire. I was driving to my job in a sepia yellow sky at 8:30 in the morning. And it is the first time I recognized that feeling that the air had texture. I've felt humidity. I know what rain feels like. I know what dry heat is. I know what wet heat. I get that. This was something different. This had a presence that was dimensional, textural. You could feel it in your lungs. You could feel it on your skin. And so I think about material like that is now part of me. That fire lives in me, literally. I wear a mask, but it's all part of you in some way, that experience, but also the physicality of it. And then when I think about my materials in terms of nests, I think about what it is to gather. You know, we gather our community, we gather our friends, we gather our information, we gather our belongings. When people have been talking about go bags a lot lately because of the fires and a lot of disasters, and we should all think about what we would grab, right? What would we gather? So there's the emergency immediate gathering, but then there's the gathering of things that we hold sacred and try to make a home from. So when I'm out in the world, I actually am gathering a lot. I gather all the time. In fact, I was walking with a friend a couple of months ago at a local track, and you know, I stop and pick things up all the time, and she was like, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's a small screw. It's great. You know, it has a future now. It's going home with me." But when I'm gathering it, you know, in the larger sense, I have actually a box called Dear World. Am I in the screen? Yeah, there we are. Dear World. And, you know, Dear World has a box of sticks and branches and roots, and it's organized by size. But it also has things that got thrown out that I pick out of the trash, like this beautiful root structure was at the bottom of a plant that was in the landfill at the greenhouse. And I'm like, I really need to have that. That's beautiful. It's just an epically beautiful piece. And I don't know where it will become, what it will become. But I do make promises to some of the things that I bring here that they have something else to be next. They have another chapter. I have a little collection of you know, shiny beads, shiny objects I pick up. I'm like a crow, you know, like there's shiny things I pick up along the way, and I wash them, I clean them, don't worry, and wash my hands and do all of those things. But they're precious in some way. They were also discarded, and they were also a version of what, you know, became trash. I So I pick up a lot of things and I save a lot of things. I also know the kind of things I'm looking for. I'm a big collector of rocks and shells, of course, but also, there's certain kinds of metal objects, there's certain strings, there's certain kinds of things that lend themselves to what I'm now thinking of as how we build home, how we build our nests, how we as individuals create safety, how we redefine our focus of belonging, how we migrate toward higher ground, how we react to tangible and intangible situations. So, one of the things that I do when I'm out walking in good weather, I'm not a winter version of this, but in the warmer version of this, I have a bucket in my car and tongs, long tongs. And I very often I'm a trash picker. I don't mean to pick trash for my studio. I mean trash that people tossed out their window or just discarded in a parking lot in particular. And they left there, lids and straws and all that stuff, just stuff. So I was at a local parking lot one day and I tried to do this practice after I walked there because here's my thought. That location has given me something so beautiful by giving me that opportunity to walk in that beautiful vista. And so in reciprocity, I try to clean it up a little bit, when I can. So I have this bucket and these tongs, and this one day I was walking in this parking lot and I'm, picking up junk. And what happened in my head and why this actually started was I would be on these walks and I would start saying like, I can't believe people just walk over this stuff. They just can't believe. And I got sick of hearing myself say that. I just couldn't say it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. Nothing was different. And I couldn't stand the sound of my own thought. So I got the bucket and the tongs because I couldn't just not do it anymore. I just couldn't. Anyway, so in the parking lot, bucket and tongs, and there's this woman who's parked in a car. I don't know what she was doing, but I'm walking around minding my own business, picking crap off the ground so I can dispose of it properly. And she rolls down her window and she yells to me. She said, "You remind me of my husband." And I'm like, wow, I don't know where this is going. But I said, "I hope that's a good thing." And she said, "Yep, he walks around just picking up other people's trash too." And I was like, well, he sounds like my kind of guy. And she just like put her window back up and that was that. But she was entirely unkind. And I thought, what is wrong with if this is the bar we're at, when trash picking is like, making the planet a little bit cleaner is like a suspect maneuver. So I think about what we discard, what we are willing to ignore, what we are choosing to ignore, what we walk over literally and metaphorically. Who are the people who stop and pay attention? Donna Stoner, who came back and said, "What are you doing with Deer View?" That's a version of paying attention to something, to someone. And I'll never forget that. It's the small things that make the big difference. When I left SUNY Oswego, I taught there for 15 years. And when I left there 2 years ago, my friend Liz, who's a dear friend and is working there, left me this note. And she said, "Thank you for leaving things better than when you found them." And honestly, it's this little note that has meant so much to me because I keep it pinned up in my studio as a reminder that that is sort of the deal. It's sort of the deal. And to me, I appreciate very much that she recognized that. But more than that, it's a reminder of, you asked about dailiness and you asked about materials. Kelsey, the idea of leaving things better than you found them is about knowing what materials need your attention and how to reorder them or sort them or throw them out or make use of them. To me, that's all of it is material. That was a really long answer to the question. I don't even know if I answered it. I'm sorry. That's what happens. But I hope I got there eventually.
You did get there because it's interesting where the people that are using found objects, it's how do you see a material, what is a material, and then once you have this material, do you always have a concept of what it will be? Like, what is it going to turn into? Do you always know, like, what this nest is going to look like?
Yeah.
And maybe we could pull up an image of a nest.
Yeah, yeah.
There might
Um,
be some people that haven't seen the show, and if they haven't, we can
yes,
give them a sneak peek.
yes, absolutely. So I'm sharing my screen. Okay,
I love
so
that idea you said about finding higher ground, and I know that connects into some of the nest as well.
yes. So let me show you. This is an overhead example of one of the nests that I think shows the materials really well. So the nest started. I saw them. I often see my work done. And by done, I mean I know where I will be when it is done. I know what it will look like. I have an understanding of the scale. I have an understanding of my intention. As I mentioned earlier, I do work in my head all the time. I do see it done. I do hear things when I listen to music, I do see numbers sometimes. I have this synesthesia sometimes of information. And sometimes that is about my work. And so when I was started building nests, I really started, these hoops that you see are clay. And I don't have a kiln. I don't work in a traditional clay manner, but I work with air dry clay. So the nest started by me making, you know, hundreds of hoops that dried in our backyard, and that became the vessel, the armature, the skeleton on which the other material could hang and be part of. I collect bottle caps from, you got it, the road, the parking lot, the edges. I collect bottle caps, and I collect sea glass, and I collect rocks and sticks and twine and all of these things. And much like every bird you've ever seen, I am putting them together in ways that feel like what is possible with what is available. This particular nest is made from a shell that I found at Herring Cove Beach in Provincetown. And it's the beginning of the shells, the shell nests are the beginning of um, me thinking about uh, fragile beaches, fragile shores, what happens to those habitats, what happens to people trying to make homes in places that are being washed away, threatened. And so this fragile little shell being the encasement, the nest. I built this on top of a painting of mine, a collage, and then different pieces from Herring Cove Beach. And so my statement for the nest, again, the artist statement, right? When I branched out, all pun intended, into the nests, I really did so mindfully, knowing that I was moving toward home. I was moving toward my understanding of belonging. I was moving toward redefining for myself what it means to assemble, how you don't need to be an assembler to assemble. What you do to assemble is you just start putting things together. So these nests are made from reclaimed and repurposed and reseen objects. I find them, I care for them, I bring them here. I make promises to them along the way, and often the promises are, you will be part of something bigger than you. It's like that gestalt, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And with these nests, I feel like that is literally true. Combining wire and ceramics and bottle caps and the flowers that I pick off the floor at the greenhouse and let dry in the back of my car. They become something precious and fragile, but they also become hardier because they end up together. So these nests are built on coils. They are built for rising tides. I'm trying to build up with the nests. This particular series was from a series of shells in Provincetown. I go to Provincetown often for a week or so in the winter when it is brutally cold, but very sunny. There's no one there but me and the person who delivers mail. It's incredibly affordable. It's quiet, and it's full of a color purple in the sky that I have never seen before or since I've been there. So some of these nests are made from a variety of materials that spans the range from bottle caps to the ceramic hoops, and some of them are more specific, but all of them imply or are meant to imply creating some kind of safe harbor. Ultimately, with the nests, and most recently, as you have up there in view, I started building up literally on bed springs. So I started thinking about what it means to work with what we have. How do you build up to try to keep your people, your safety dry? How do you keep yourself whole? How do you keep your fragile possession, your fragile life, your fragile heart intact? And these bed springs I found, they're rusty, they're beautiful, they're the perfect, to me, vehicle to express the fragility, but also the possibility of trusting the air. And so they're built on top of these springs, and the springs themselves are affixed to this base, right? Which is also a painting of mine. And yet the springs have motion in them. They can sway. So within the affixed base, there's motion. There's a reaction to the air. There's a reaction to their place. There's a reaction to wind. The I have some in progress shots, Kelsey, that I can show you of nests, but like they come together quite literally by me putting things together. It's if I am that crow, I surround myself with many things that these are cherry stems. And part of what Donna and I dry in the house when she goes, we're saving these, and I'd be like, yes, we are. And so these get saved and dried and cherished and brought in for uh the sculpture of it all, and pieces of slate that I find, and petals and buds and you name it. But it all belongs, like it's from the world. It is the world. None of these things is separate from all of it. And that sounds really weird, but it's really also true. There's a synergy to these nests because they're from the same place. They're from the same heart. They're from the same thought. They're from the same air. I think about the air. I think about how we are all good with the idea, like we share this safe space, we share the air, we share, we're part of it, until we actually are breathing fire, until we are actually having ash fall on us, until COVID means that we're actually sick and making each other sick by not caring for each other. So, sharing air is lovely, and it's also something that I think we've lost track of what that actually means sometimes, because it comes with a responsibility to each other. So, the idea of public health, the idea of public safety, the idea of public housing, the idea of caring for each other, and to take something as disconnected, perhaps initially, as some of these materials might be, and putting them together. For example, this piece is built on, I have very dear friends who save me their wine corks and the wine wires that they pull off the top. So it's built on wine corks and wine wires and these wooden spools, and torn pieces of discarded books that make the bottom of the nest. And I've built up from there. And so the last piece I'm going to show you of the nests in progress is this nest. It's one of the bed spring nests in progress. And again, the bottom is attached, but at the top, it's kind of growing bigger. It's becoming a slightly bigger base, but it's filled with the same kind of discordant, but also elegantly weird collection of things, because birds use what we give them to use. Birds use what they have, and so do we, and so will we more and more. I think about what it means to have to rebuild for our own safety, and what it means to have to move for our own safety, and what it means to improvise, what it means to redefine what materials, as you asked me earlier, are essential. What is an essential material? I'm going to stop sharing my screen a second. I talked about the air, and I talk about the air a lot because it was such an incredible moment for me to feel that air 2 summers ago. And so one of the pieces that I want to share with you is built a lot about that experience. I'm going to share my screen and go back to this piece. And it's called October Sky. And that experience made me think about stitching. It made me think about rips. It made me think about tears. That experience of breathing in dust and particles from another country made me think about how many fissures there are in this otherwise theoretically smooth world, right? And it made me think about, how do we suture it? How do we begin to put closure in places that would keep us all better, healthier, safer, more lovely. And so this piece was born out of my trying to think about reaching for the other side, reaching for stitches, creating some sort of closure in gaps that should not have been opened, or maybe should have been opened to get our attention. Either way, gaps that provided me an understanding of how fragile and connected and ultimately uh, temporary, this our relationship to each other, to the air, to the sea is. We have no it's so many things I have taken for granted, and I know better. And yet sometimes there are moments when you like really get it, like you really get it. And this was I really get it moment on certain levels about certain things. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. There's a Buddhist teacher. She's in California, I think, and her name is Sylvia Boorstein. And she's an author. She's many things. She has a place in California, a meditation center. I think it's called Spirit Rock. And she talks about, facing difficult things and how hard it is to keep standing up and keep looking at those difficult things and talking. She talks about talking to herself through those things. And she talks about how when she has hard things that she needs to think about or change in herself or do differently, she starts her conversations with herself by saying, sweetheart. So she calls herself sweetheart before she says all those things. And so sometimes when I'm feeling like I don't have a clue like what my next footstep should be, or I don't have, another ounce of energy to put in the direction of a lack of truth in the world I don't understand, I step back and I think about Sylvia Boorstein saying, sweetheart, because I feel like it's those moments of kindness. I feel like it's those moments of generosity, of spirit, that we rise to the occasion sometimes and give each other. And I think sometimes, as the first responders that we now are, it's an important thing to step back and give to ourselves. So I give you the word sweetheart as a way to soften the blow some days when you're at a loss for how to do it, whatever the it is. Um, I want to show you another image that I'm going to share my screen. I want to show you another image from the show, um, which is it's called Round Lake because it's the round lake that it is Round Lake. It's behind Green Lakes, and it's in Fayetteville, New York, and it's a miramitic lake, which is a really interesting kind of lake. It means that the layers of the water never really mingle. They never really mix. So Green Lakes is green is because of that, and some the chemistry of that. So it's a really sort of magical, unusual place. But when I was making this image, I was thinking about edges, and I was thinking about what is possible when you walk toward the edge, what is possible when you're willing to not steer too far away from the intersection of surfaces and textures and moments, right? Those of us who have not just decided to close our eyes and ears and heart, those of us who are trying to stay open, those of us who are trying to stay tender, those of us who are trying to use the word sweetheart, are trying to be on an edge right now. And I think you don't often hear the word sweetheart and edge in the same sentence, but it's really true. And so this piece to me is about, the luminous qualities of that intersection. And it's also for me a little bit about hope. It's a little bit about hope. And, I don't know if you're familiar with Rebecca Solnit, Solnit, but if you're not, find her. She's somebody really incredible at this time. And so she has this quote that says, hope is not a feeling, hope is not optimism, hope is a discipline. and so to me, that goes back to what Kelsey was asking me about dailiness, about dailiness as a discipline, right? So dailiness, like my qigong breathing with the car alarm, that's a discipline. That is that's a version of hope that I maintain that practice for myself. You know, when I did this piece, it's called Fireflies. And when I did Fireflies, one of my favorite things about this piece has been listening to people react to it by just going, oh, because they're remembering fireflies. And it's been a lovely nonverbal musicality to the reaction. And I have appreciated every one of those moments that I've had the good fortune to hear, because it is a connection to something that, a phenomenon that perhaps many of us hold near and dear, and it's relatable, and it's transient, it's here. And so the reaction to this piece, I think, resonates with some people in a way that harkens uh, a goodness or a feeling like it's okay. A sweetheart, maybe, I don't know, but that's been one of my favorite things about the fireflies image. I'm going to show you another piece before we wrap it up here, but I want to show you this piece called Sentinels. And the Sentinels piece, to me, I'm going to put this in slideshow mode. There we go. The Sentinels piece, to me, says so much about um, who we are and where we are, what we're looking at, and the degree to which there is a vigilance to our time. We happen to be the people on duty right now. We happen to be the people who are on watch. And there's so much beautiful landscape to survey. There's so much to protect, and there's a beauty of the mystery in this piece, but there's also a very strong defense to me of what is holy. When I think about what we are all trying to gain is a footing, a better footing in kindness, a better footing in uh, a sense of honor, a better footing in a sense of peacefulness that allows for the lack of vigilance, even for a moment, on this side of the fence. And so the strong, clear eye of this bird, the pose, the shininess of it, it's so stark, so posed, so ready to react against so much, and the color and the odd seem kind of ominous, right? But the idea of sentinels as being the watchers and the people who will sound an alarm and be on duty so that maybe others take a rest and then take their turn. I'm gonna go out of this. The last piece I want to show you is actually a piece, it's one of the newer pieces. Dear World continues. It will continue, I think, for as long as I continue. There's I'm going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second. There's a podcast. If you are a podcast person, and if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. And it's called Wiser Than Me. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the podcast host, and she's had several seasons of this, but I believe her first season, she was interviewing Jane Fonda, who I think is like 85, 6'7", something like that. And so the whole premise of Wiser Than Me is she's interviewing older women because they have something to say, and they haven't been listened to a lot. And so she's interviewing Jane Fonda, and Jane Fonda is really eloquent about her life and the story arc of her life. And she's talking about if you think about your life, uh, if you think about maybe even the possibility that you get to live to be 90, maybe, who knows? If you think about that as the end date, then you think about 0 to 30 as your first act, 30 to 60 as your second act, 60 to 90 as your third act. This is just how she thinks about it. So she said when before she turned 60, she did a life review of those first 58, 59 years. and then decided that for her third act, she was going to devote her time and attention and her money to climate change. And so she has been doing these fire drill Fridays all over the country at places that need climate attention. She's been giving gobs of money, but also coordinating and organizing so much around climate change in specific areas of our country. So she has defined how her third act will go. She has devoted her third act, and obviously at her age, she's well into her third act and is going strong in that direction. So I take that to heart, you know, I take what it means to be in my third act and to think about where do I want my time and attention? Where do I want my talent and my resources and my energy and my mojo to go, you know? And so this last piece I'll show you was from a day that some of us had the good fortune to witness, which was the total eclipse in April. So I had the good fortune to be in our backyard with dear friends. And this is a piece based on what I experienced in that eclipse, which was totality. We had a moment of totality in the backyard that was something I will never fully express properly. It was dark and purple and cool and quiet and magical beyond what I can say. I was unprepared for crying as part of it. I was unprepared for how out of my skin it took me, because it was something utterly unexpected, for which I was utterly unprepared, but for which it felt like a view I have always been waiting for. You know, I felt like it was that big. So in that moment, you know, there was a reverence, again, a holiness. And I don't mean a God holiness necessarily. I don't know what I mean by holiness, except I know that it's something bigger than me, bigger than us. It was something utterly gifted to us that we had the good fortune to be on the planet to see. It was something we gathered for. People put intention around getting to totality, you know, there was a lot of focus on that because that's how big it is, how big it was. So we got to see it. We got to be part of it. And for that moment, I thought it was something that was a dream reset. It was a dream reset. It was like closing your eyes and waking up into this other version of what calm and beautiful can look like. So there we are in the backyard, and just with our glasses, being dutiful little glasses wearers, and, you know, feeling the purple nothing. You know, it was cool purple nothing. And you can't, I'll never recreate it. I tried to create a piece that gives to you what happened in my heart at that moment, because it was some kind of ultimate serenity. It was some kind of ultimate forgiveness to see that. It was a grace and a forgiveness in that moment. It was so brief. It was so brief, but it was so ultimately cleansing to have seen it and been part of it. We are so lucky that, you know, at least over our backyard for those few seconds, that's what appeared, you know, that's what appeared, that total eclipse. And so I think about, you know, what it means to reset ourselves, what it means to be willing to be part of uh, a dailiness that gets us to the edge, that gets us to look up, that gets us to an eclipse, to gets us to the next day, you know, the next trench, the next beautiful flower. I don't know how it all goes. I just know that my commitment to Dear World is ongoing, as my understanding of what it means to be here now is ongoing. And you know, it's a privilege to keep having birthdays. So I'm grateful for every one of them and the ability to use that time with some intention. And, you know, I'm really grateful to you all for being here tonight. I hope you have a chance to not just see View from my show, go to View, because you should go to View in Old Forge. It's a beautiful place. And the more beauty you can fill your life with, right now, the better off you will be for it. It's a version of sustenance. So thank you for being here. I don't know what questions there are or aren't. Kelsey, I do hope you're still out there. And there you are. And that's what I've got.
Well, thank you, Amy. I'll take this time to let people enter into the chat if they have any questions. But I do want to say it's been a joy to get to know you through getting this organized and getting it up, and getting to take your class recently has been wonderful. Your art is so pertinent to the time we live in and is completed with such intention and love that you just feel it when you're in the presence of your work. So I'm so glad we were able to have you at View.
Thank you. Me too. Me too. I hope it's the beginning of a long relationship, Kelsey.
I do too. Well, we were talking about how these nests are, you think of them as they're going to keep moving on and they're almost going to have a migration of their own.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about how you want to have like a larger one, and I think that's an interesting idea.
I do. I would love to do a site-specific nest and find a place to build something that, much like people who have to rebuild their lives in unexpected places, I would like to build a nest in the same way, to find a place and build accordingly with the materials at hand.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, me too.
They're going to become their own moving thing and like living being within our earth, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I am not seeing any questions at the moment.
Okay.
Um, but I think I inundated you with quite a few, so I
You did
hope,
great. I
yeah.
appreciate that.
And thank you to everyone that's joined today, or tonight. We'll be having another one next week too, with Alan Friedman, Starlight, which is photography show, which is very close-up solar flare photography. So also very celestial, but in a whole nother realm and way of photographing. Oh, I have somebody with their hand up. Hmm. Oh, there they are. They have come in. The questions have come in. All right. I have one from Donna Stoner who tuned in. Um, she asked, can you describe the path you followed to get you to your current place? And will you show us or describe your exhibit at View? Oh, okay, so that was an earlier one. Sorry, these didn't pop up. Um, there we go. Donna also said, I am finding so many interesting things on the ground around Route 690 and 81 construction. And I'm so interested in the history of the highway and the future of our neighborhoods that were disrupted when 81 was built and will be reclaimed. Is there a story in there?
Is there a story in there? Yes. The answer is always yes.
Yeah, I do you know much about the places where you're finding objects?
Oh, me? Where I'm finding objects? I haven't wandered around the 81 digging or anything like that very much, so I don't know about that per se. But I some of the some of the beach glass that I have actually has some really beautiful imprints from the kind of pharmacy bottle it was, or some kind of thing like that. So there's some beautiful imprinting of texture. I don't have a lot of historical items necessarily, but I think there is a way in which objects that are excavated, especially for things like what's happening with 81. I think the Historical Association, I hope, I think they will take some leadership in preservation and in finding out, in fact, in um, putting facts and dates around things so that we know what we found. It's really is an excavation time.
Mm. Yeah, and it's interesting because you're finding more new objects that will become a part of history rather than, excavating things up. Yeah.
Correct. There's a person I follow on Instagram, and I really appreciate this feed. And it's called London Mudlarker, or London Mudlark, I think it is. And so she doesn't keep these things herself. These are historical objects that she finds and she's qualified to be looking for in the muddy shores of the Thames. And so she very often will come up with like a button from 1450 or something. It's really kind of amazing. And then she does the research about what it is, who might have worn it, where it may have come from. And then it is part of a historical record of the time. But London Mudlark, it's a great feed, but very much in keeping, Donna Stona, with what I think you're talking about, just on a different scale.
Great. Thank you. I have another person. Well, someone also mentioned that the Stone Quarry Art Park might be a good site for the large nest installation.
Oh, great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I love Stone Quarry.
And then we have another comment. Lovely to hear you speak on your clear visions again, Amy. Your colors, particularly in Sentinels, are so vibrant and evocative. Can you speak more on those choices?
My color choices. Yeah. Let me pull that image up. Um, Hang on one second. Sentinels are here. So I very much was rooted in my initial image of the birds being so commanding in their shiny blue, black, feathery stillness, but also just as shapes, they have a real confidence. They feel forward, like they're about to launch. So there's a real commanding nature to that. And so the blue underneath them feels like to me a grounding for them. It feels to me like their home base. It feels to me like where they come from. And in front of them, the murky yellow ember colors, the sepias, the slightly dingy edges of the clouds, to me feels like what is unresolved, what is metaphorically unresolved, but how, color tells stories, right? And so the reverberation between the saturated uh, uh, palette, which is essentially like the bottom part of it here, that resonates up against this murkier, siltier, softer, but also a little bit more ominous sky and landscape, to me creates a tension, which the birds themselves traverse physically. Their bodies are in both worlds. And to me, that's, part of the narration of the image is 1 foot here, 1 foot there.
Great. Thank you so much. Uh, yeah, the rest of the comments are just saying how great it's
Oh,
been. So
thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you.
it's great to see the hope and heartbreak and beauty of all this. So thank you for sharing tonight, Amy. And I hope people can tune in for more of these. And like I said, this will be posted to our YouTube channel, which you can find through our For Artists page under Artist Talks. So if you can't remember something from this or want to go back and hear it again, we'll be posting that in a couple days. And I think one other thing I'd love to mention, because we talked about coexisting, and I think as artists, it's great that we coexist and share ideas. And a lot of our upcoming exhibitions after this series, that was all about celestial things, will be our Central Adirondack art show, which is open to all artists within 200 miles, which is great to see how many different people all live in this community.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, feel free to submit to that. You can find more about that on the website too. So, the internet's a great thing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Amy. Thank you to all of you out there. And I hope you guys have a great night.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.